The lights of Hollywood could blind you, or at least that's what Elvis Presley often thought. They certainly made it hard to see clearly, especially when you were standing in front of the camera trying to remember lines that felt like they were written for a robot. It was a Tuesday in the spring of 1964, and Elvis was on the set of his latest picture, a musical comedy set in a Hawaiian paradise. He was supposed to be a happy-go-lucky tour guide, singing upbeat tunes and charming every lady in sight. On the outside, he probably looked the part. He had the tan, the smile, the perfect pompadour. But inside, a different kind of song was playing, a mournful off-key ballad of frustration. "All right, Elvis, darling, let's get this one perfect." The director, a portly man named Harry, who always seemed to be perspiring, clapped his hands with an enthusiasm Elvis couldn't share. Action. Elvis hit his mark. The scene involved him serenading a group of tourists with a song about pineapples and sunshine. He strummed his ukulele, an instrument he barely knew how to play, and plastered on his famous grin. His voice, usually so full of soul and power, felt flat, hollow. He sang the words, but his mind was miles away, remembering the roar of the crowds in Memphis, the way a real song could make people feel something deep down in their bones. This was just fluff. Another movie, another soundtrack album full of forgettable tunes, another paycheck for the Colonel. Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, was a shadow that loomed large over his career, a benevolent dictator who always knew what was best, or at least what was most profitable. And what was most profitable, apparently, was a seemingly endless parade of B-movies. When he'd first come to Hollywood, Elvis had dreams. He'd seen Marlon Brando in On the Waterfront, James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. He wanted to act, truly. Act. He wanted to be a serious artist, to tell stories that mattered, to explore characters with depth and complexity. His first movie, Love Me Tender, had shown a glimpse of that potential. He'd played a young, conflicted man, and the critics had even said he had promise. King Creole, released a few years later, had been his best work, a gritty drama where he played a troubled singer in New Orleans. He poured his heart into that role, felt alive when the camera was rolling, but then the formula had set in. After his 2-year stint in the Army, it was like a switch had been flipped. He returned to Hollywood, and suddenly every script seemed identical. Sun, sand, pretty girls, a couple of fights, and a dozen songs that sounded like they were written by a committee. The stories were paper thin, the characters even thinner. He was no longer an actor. He was a brand, a guaranteed box office draw, and the studios didn't want to risk messing with that golden goose. Cut. Perfect, Elvis. Absolutely perfect. Harry beamed, oblivious to the storm brewing behind Elvis's eyes. Elvis forced a smile and nodded. He walked off the set, shedding the ukulele like a burden. His assistant, Charlie Hodge, was waiting with a towel and a cold drink. Charlie had been with him for years, a loyal friend who saw beyond a superstar persona. "You okay, E?" Charlie asked, his voice low. Understanding. Elvis just grunted. Taking a long swig of water, "Charlie, I swear if I have to sing one more song about a hula girl or a surfboard, I'm gonna lose my mind." Charlie chuckled sympathetically. "It's almost over, buddy. Just a few more weeks." A few more weeks of this, then another one and another. It never stops, does it? It's like I'm on a treadmill and I can't get off. Elvis ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect coif. "I keep asking the Colonel, can't we do something different, something with some meat to it?" And he just smiles that big smile of his and says, "Son, we're making money. Why mess with success?" The truth was, the money wasn't the problem. He owned Graceland, bought Cadillacs for strangers, supported his family and friends. What he craved wasn't riches. It was respect, artistic fulfillment. He wanted to feel the challenge of a difficult role, the satisfaction of a truly great performance. He wanted to be taken seriously as an actor, not just a singer who could fill a movie theater. He remembered a conversation he'd had with a director, once a man who seemed to genuinely care about his craft. The director had suggested a serious dramatic role, a character with real struggles. Elvis had been thrilled, invigorated. He called the Colonel, bubbling with excitement. The Colonel had listened patiently, then gently but firmly explained why it wasn't a good idea. Too risky, son. Fans want to see you singing and smiling. They don't want to see you suffering. It's bad for the brand. And that was it. The brand. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was also a product, a very lucrative product, and products didn't have feelings or artistic aspirations. They just sold. He retreated to his dressing room, a lavish but sterile space that felt more like a prison cell than a sanctuary. He paced, restless energy vibrating through him. He picked up his guitar, the real one, the one he used for writing, not just strumming on set. He played a bluesy chord, let it linger. He started singing a raw, heartfelt lament, something that would never make it into one of his movies. It was about feeling trapped, about the weight of expectation, about the fear of being forgotten if he didn't keep churning out the same material. He sang until his throat was hoarse, until the anger and the sadness had temporarily drained from him. He put the guitar down. His eyes landed on a small reel-to-reel tape recorder on his table, one he used to record song ideas or thoughts when they came to him. An impulse struck him. He pressed the record button. The small reel began to turn, picking up the ambient hum of the room, the distant sounds of the set. He cleared his throat. "All right," he began, his voice low, a little raspy from singing. This is Elvis. It's April 28th, 1964. And I just gotta say something before I lose my mind completely." He paused, took a deep breath. "I'm tired. I'm just so damn tired of it all. These movies, they're killing me. They're killing what I love about making music, about performing." He spoke for a long time, pouring out his heart, his frustrations, his desperate longing for something more. The tape whirred faithfully, capturing every word, every sigh, every moment of raw emotion. He didn't know if anyone would ever hear it, or if it was just for him, a way to vent the pressure that was building inside him. All he knew was that for a few minutes, he wasn't Elvis Presley, the movie star. He was just Elvis, a man trapped in a golden cage, trying to find his voice again. He pressed stop, the small machine falling silent. The moment passed, the confession hanging in the air like smoke. He rewound the tape, then put it carefully into a small, nondescript box with some other personal effects. It was a secret, a small rebellion, a whisper in the dark, hoping someone someday might hear it and understand. Little did he know decades later that whisper would become a roar. Decades later, in the quiet, dusty archives of a small independent film museum in Nashville, a young woman named Lily Vance was searching for something special. Lily was a film studies student at Vanderbilt, and she adored old movies, especially the ones that seemed to have a hidden story behind them. Her passion wasn't just for the finished product on screen, but for the lives of the people who made them, the struggles, the triumphs, the lost dreams. She had a summer internship at the museum, a place filled with forgotten treasures. Old film reels, costumes, props, and boxes upon boxes of celebrity ephemera. Her current task was to organize a recent donation from a private collector, a man who had amassed an enormous collection of Hollywood memorabilia from the 1950s and 60s. He'd passed away, and his family, not knowing what to do with it all, had donated it to the museum. "Just try to make sense of it, Lily," her supervisor, Mr. Harrison, had said with a sigh. "It's a complete mess, but there might be some gems in there." Lily didn't mind the mess. To her, it was an adventure. She loved the smell of old paper and celluloid, the tangible connection to a bygone era. She spent her days carefully sifting through piles of studio memos, fan mail, signed photographs, and costume sketches. One sweltering afternoon, buried deep in a large, unlabeled wooden crate, she found a small, rather ordinary-looking cardboard box. It was a simple shoebox, really, but it felt different from the others. Most items were meticulously labeled or at least grouped by celebrity. This one just sat there unassuming. Curious, Lily carefully lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among some old faded photographs and a few crumpled concert programs, was a reel-to-reel tape recorder. It was an older model, the kind her grandfather used to have in his study. Next to it sat a single, small magnetic tape reel, the kind used for audio recordings. It wasn't labeled either. Lily's heart gave a little skip. Old audio recordings were always fascinating. They offered a direct, unedited glimpse into the past, voices that weren't filtered through publicists or carefully crafted press releases. She carefully picked up the tape, feeling its weight. It was just a thin strip of plastic coated with iron oxide, but it held the potential for untold stories. "I wonder what's on this," she murmured to herself. She looked around for a tape player, and thankfully, the museum had one in the archives used for digitizing old recordings. She carefully threaded the tape onto the spindle, her fingers trembling slightly with anticipation. She put on a pair of headphones, the large padded kind that blocked out all outside noise. After double-checking the connections, she pressed the play button. For a moment there was only static, a soft hiss that spoke of age and disuse. Lily adjusted the volume, leaning closer. Then, faintly at first, she heard it, a man clearing his throat. A deep breath. This wasn't a song. It wasn't an interview from a glossy magazine. This was raw. "All right," Elvis's voice began, a little low and raspy. This is Elvis. It's April 28th, 1964. And I just gotta say something before I lose my mind completely." Lily gasped, a silent, sharp intake of breath. 1964. That was right in the middle of his peak movie-making period. The time when he was churning out 3 films a year, each one seemingly more outlandish than the last. He was supposed to be living the dream, wasn't he? The happiest man in Hollywood. I'm tired. I'm just so damn tired of it. All these movies, they're killing me. They're killing what I love about making music, about performing. Lily leaned back in her chair, stunned. She pulled off one headphone, just to make sure she wasn't dreaming, that the museum wasn't suddenly filled with the ghost of Elvis Presley. The silence of the archives was. She put the headphone back on her heart, pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Elvis continued, his voice growing stronger, more passionate, as if a dam had broken. He talked about the scripts, how they were all the same, how he felt like a puppet. He spoke of his desire for serious roles, for challenging material, and the constant refusal from his management. "They just want to see me sing a few songs, punch a bad guy, and get the girl," he lamented, a note of genuine sadness in his voice. "They don't care if it's a good story. They don't care if it means anything. It's just product. And I'm the product." Lily listened, mesmerized, for what felt like an hour. She heard the desperation, the artistic yearning, the deep, profound frustration. This wasn't the confident, grinning Elvis of the big screen. This was a man struggling, a soul trapped. He sounded weary, disappointed, almost heartbroken. He spoke about King Creole, how proud he was of that film, how he felt he had truly acted. And then he contrasted it with the current films, calling them silly and embarrassing. He described how he tried to argue for better scripts, only to be told it was too risky, that the Colonel knew best. "He tells me it's for the fans," Elvis said, a bitter laugh escaping him. "But I don't think the fans want to see me make a fool of myself, over and over again. I think they want to see me do something real." When the tape finally clicked to an end, the sudden silence was deafening. Lily slowly removed her headphones. Her mind was reeling. She had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that shattered the carefully constructed image of the ever-happy, ever-grateful movie star. This was a secret, a raw, unfiltered confession from the king himself. She looked at the small reel in the player, then at the ordinary shoebox. How did it end up here, hidden away for so long? And what was she supposed to do with it now? The tape wasn't just a historical packet, it was a voice from the past crying out for understanding. And Lily, a young student in a quiet archive, felt a profound responsibility settle upon her shoulders. She knew with absolute certainty that this recording needed to be heard, but how and when and by whom? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was, Elvis Presley had a story to tell, and she was going to help him tell it. Lily spent the rest of the day in a haze. She listened to the recording 3 more times, each listen revealing new layers of Elvis's anguish. She meticulously made notes, transcribing key phrases, noting the shifts in his tone of voice. He sounded angry at times, defeated at others, but always beneath it all there was a profound sadness. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them, the pauses, the sighs, the raw emotion that poured out of him. "They tell me to just show up, hit my marks, and sing," he had said at one point, his voice laced with resignation. "They don't want me to think, they don't want me to feel. Just be the good-looking guy who sings the songs and smiles for the camera. It's not acting, it's just being Elvis, the cartoon version of Elvis." Talked about the scripts arriving, sometimes just days before filming, leaving no time for proper rehearsal or discussion. He described trying to suggest changes to add more depth to his characters, only to be met with polite but firm resistance. "It's in the contract, Elvis. 2 musical numbers, 1 fight scene, a comedy sidekick, and a pretty girl. That's what sells, the contract." It seemed to be the invisible chain that bound him. He spoke of Colonel Parker, not with anger but with a weary acceptance. "The Colonel means well, I know he does. He looks out for me in his own way, but he just sees the numbers, the box office, the record sales. He doesn't see the art." Lily felt a pang in her chest. She had always thought of Elvis as the ultimate superstar, living a life of unimaginable glamour and freedom. This recording painted a completely different picture. It showed a man yearning for artistic respect, trapped by his own colossal success and the commercial machine built around him. She thought about his filmography. All those movies, Fun in Acapulco, Viva Las Vegas, Girl Happy, Frankie and Johnny Clambig. They were full of catchy songs and stunning locations, but the plots were undeniably shallow. She had seen some of them, mostly for the fun of it, never really thinking about the man behind the persona. Now looking at them through this new lens, they seemed almost tragic. Each upbeat song, each forced smile became a silent scream of frustration. Her supervisor, Mr. Harrison, walked into the archive carrying a stack of files. He was a kind, scholarly man with a passion for film preservation. He saw Lily still hunched over the tape player, her face serious. "Everything all right, Lily?" he asked gently. Lily hesitated. This was big, too big to blurt out casually. "Mr. Harrison," she began, her voice a little shaky. I found something really important." She explained about the shoebox, the tape recorder, and the unlabeled reel. Then she slowly, carefully explained what was on it. Mr. Harrison's eyebrows rose higher and higher as she spoke. His usual calm demeanor slowly gave way to a look of intense surprise, then fascination. "Elvis Presley?" he murmured, his eyes wide. "Private recording from 1964, unheard of. Are you absolutely certain it's him?" "Absolutely," Lily confirmed, her voice firm now. "I've cross-referenced his voice patterns, the specific dates he mentions, the details about the movies he was making at the time. It's him, sir, and it's incredibly powerful." She offered him the headphones slowly, carefully, and put them on. Lily watched his face as he listened. At first he was skeptical, a small frown line appearing between his brows. But as Elvis's voice filled his ears, as the raw emotion of the recording washed over him, his expression changed. The frown softened, his eyes widened slightly, and a look of deep understanding spread across his face. He nodded slowly, occasionally closing his eyes, as if to fully absorb the weight of Elvis's words. When the tape ended, Mr. Harrison took off the headphones. He sat in silence for a long moment, his gaze distant, lost in thought. "My word," he finally whispered, his voice hushed. "My absolute word. I always suspected, of course, the decline in film quality, the repetitive nature, but to hear it from him, that level of disappointment. The man was an artist." He looked at Lily, his eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and reverence. "Lily, This isn't just a gem. This is a treasure, a historical document. This changes everything we thought we knew about his movie career. It gives context to all those films that many people dismiss as mere fluff. Lily asked the question she had been wrestling with for hours. It feels so personal, like we're intruding. Mr. Harrison nodded. It is personal, and that's what makes it so valuable. But it's also a piece of history against the commercial pressures of the time. This isn't gossip, Lily. This is a profound insight into the mind of one of the 20th century's biggest stars. It shows his humanity, his artistic integrity. He paused, a thoughtful look on his face. We have a responsibility, Lily, a responsibility to preserve it and to share it, carefully and thoughtfully. Not for sensationalism, but for understanding, for his legacy. Lily felt a wave of relief. She had been so worried about the ethics of it all, but Mr. Harrison's words resonated with her. This wasn't about tearing down an icon. It was about truly understanding him. It was about giving a voice to a man who felt he had lost his. We need to digitize it immediately to ensure its preservation, Mr. Harrison said, already starting to formulate a plan. And then we need to think about how to introduce this to the world. It needs to be handled with immense respect and scholarly care. Lily nodded, a renewed sense of purpose filling her. Her summer internship had just become something far more significant. She wasn't just organizing old boxes. She was helping to rewrite a chapter of history to give Elvis Presley the chance to tell his own story, decades after he had recorded it. In a moment of quiet desperation, the voice from the past had finally found its listener, and it was ready to be heard by the world. The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Lily. The first priority was to digitize the recording. Mr. Harrison personally oversaw the process, ensuring every precaution was taken to protect the fragile magnetic tape. The audio quality, considering its age, was remarkably clear. Once digitized, the original tape was carefully placed in a climate-controlled vault, preserved for future generations. Now that the recording was secure, the discussion turned to how to share it. Mr. Harrison believed it deserved a scholarly approach, perhaps a research paper presented at a film studies conference, followed by a public release through the museum's archival program. He also saw the potential for a small, tasteful exhibition. Lily, however, felt a deeper, more personal connection to the recording. She wasn't just a student. She was a fan, not necessarily of all his movies, but of the phenomenon of Elvis, and now, even more so, of the man himself. She wanted the world to understand the struggle, not just hear a soundbite. Mr. Harrison, she suggested one afternoon, as they reviewed the transcription, I think it needs more than just a paper. It needs a story. We need to show why he felt this way, the context of his career, the forces at play. You mean, like a narrative piece, a deeper dive into the Hollywood machine of the 60s and Colonel Parker's influence? Exactly. Lily brightened. We could explore the contracts, the production schedules, the limited scripts, show how he was boxed in, and contrast it with his earlier, more promising roles. Like King Creole. Show the Elvis and nodded slowly. That's an ambitious project, Lily. But I think you're right. This isn't just about Elvis's personal frustration. It's a case study of how a powerful artistic talent can be stifled by commercial demands. He looked at her, a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. Do you want to take the lead on this research? I'll guide you, of course, but it sounds like you have a strong vision. Lily's heart leaped. Yes, absolutely, Mr. Harrison, I'd love to. And so Lily embarked on a deep dive into the labyrinthine world of Elvis Presley's movie career. She spent hours poring over old Hollywood, trade papers, studio budgets, interview transcripts, and biographies. She delved into the specifics of his contracts, reading about the incredible number of films he was obligated to make in a short period, the lack of creative control, the demands for lucrative soundtrack albums. She learned about the tight production schedules that allowed no time for character development or improvisation. She read about the scripts being written specifically to include musical numbers regardless of whether they fit the plot. It was a well-oiled machine designed to churn out a specific product, and Elvis was the main cog. One afternoon, she came across a particularly revealing interview with a director who had worked on several of Elvis's movies in the late 60s. The director, speaking years later, recalled Elvis's quiet despair on set. He'd sometimes just sit there looking out the window after we'd done a particularly ridiculous scene, the director had said. You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't happy. He was a professional. He'd always do his job, but the spark, the joy was gone. He wanted to do something more meaningful, but the Colonel had him locked down. This resonated deeply with Elvis's words on the tape. It wasn't just his perception. Others had seen it too. Lily started to compile a presentation, weaving together Elvis's recorded words with historical evidence, creating a compelling narrative of artistic confinement. She even reached out to a few online Elvis fan communities, seeking out longtime fans who might have unique insights or personal recollections. She was careful not to reveal the existence of the tape yet, but she asked general questions about their perceptions of his movie career, their favorite films, and their thoughts on his acting abilities. Many fans expressed similar sentiments to Elvis's own frustrations. They loved the music, but often found the movies themselves to be silly or forgettable. Some expressed sadness that he hadn't had more opportunities for serious roles. He had so much talent, one fan wrote in a forum, but it felt like Hollywood just used him for his looks and his voice and never let him really stretch his wings. This validation strengthened Lily's resolve. This wasn't just a niche academic interest. It was a widely felt truth among those who truly admired Elvis, beyond the surface. As she delved deeper, Lily came to understand Colonel Tom Parker's role more fully. He was a master showman and negotiator, fiercely protective of Elvis's earnings and image. His strategies, while highly lucrative, often prioritized quantity over quality, and immediate financial gain over long-term artistic development. He saw Elvis as an investment, a money-making enterprise, and he managed that enterprise with an iron fist. Lily realized that Parker wasn't necessarily malicious, but his business acumen simply overshadowed any consideration for Elvis's artistic desires. The more Lily researched, the more empathetic she became. Elvis wasn't just a superstar who had everything. He was a human being with dreams and disappointments, just like anyone else. His struggles, amplified by his fame, were heartbreaking. The secret recording wasn't just a moment of frustration. It was a plea, a testament to a spirit that refused to be completely crushed, even if it couldn't openly rebel. She spent late nights at the museum, surrounded by the echoes of the past, feeling closer to Elvis than she ever imagined possible. She felt a profound connection to his frustration, an understanding that transcended decades. This research wasn't just an academic exercise anymore. It was a mission to give Elvis the voice he deserved, to ensure his artistic integrity was recognized, even if it was decades too late. The ripple effect had begun, starting with one hidden tape, and now flowing through Lily, ready to spread out into the world. Lily's research into Colonel Tom Parker's influence became a significant part of her project. It was impossible to understand Elvis's movie frustrations without understanding the man who managed every aspect of his career. Colonel Parker was a fascinating, often controversial figure. He had a military style, title, but no actual military background. He was an immigrant who guarded his past fiercely, and he was a brilliant, relentless promoter. He had taken Elvis, a raw, talented but unpolished diamond, and transformed him into a global phenomenon. No one could deny his genius for marketing and negotiation, but that genius came at a cost to Elvis's artistic freedom. Lily found stacks of contracts reproduced in various biographies and historical documents. They revealed the extent of the Colonel's control, every aspect of Elvis's professional life, from his concert appearances to his recording sessions and, most importantly for Lily's research, his movie deals, passed through the Colonel. These contracts often stipulated a fixed number of films per year, and the studios, eager to capitalize on Elvis's immense popularity, were happy to oblige. Colonel's philosophy was simple: make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, and movies were a surefire way to do that. Each film came with a lucrative soundtrack album, Guaranteeing double income quality was secondary to quantity and profitability. Lily discovered that Elvis rarely saw a full script before signing on. Often he'd be presented with just a synopsis, and by the time a full script was available, the deal was already done. There was little to no room for negotiation or creative input from Elvis himself. He was a performer for hire, locked into a rigorous production schedule. She found anecdotes from former co-stars and crew members often speaking off the record, or years later confirming Elvis's quiet despair. He was always on time, always knew his lines, never complained on set. One actor recalled in a biography, "You could see the light drain from his eyes with each passing film. He was going through the motions." Another story described a time when Elvis passionately argued for a particular dramatic script that he felt would challenge him. He'd gone directly to the studio head, bypassing the Colonel, a rare and daring move. The studio head, surprised but impressed by Elvis's earnestness, had considered it. But then the Colonel stepped in. He calmly explained to the studio that this was too risky, not what the fans wanted, and would interfere with the established formula. The project was swiftly dropped. The Colonel saw him as a brand, a product. Lily noted in her research journal, he perfected the formula that made Elvis millions, but in doing so, he choked out the artist within. She learned about Parker's fear of anything that might diminish Elvis's family-friendly image. Serious dramas, with their potential for darker themes or complex characters, were deemed too dangerous. Elvis needed to be wholesome, charming, and perpetually upbeat. This restricted the types of roles he could ever consider. The Colonel's fear of live performances also played a role. He kept Elvis away from touring for years, preferring the controlled environment of movie sets. This meant fewer opportunities for Elvis to perform the music he loved, live, and raw, and forced him further into the movie grind. Lily also considered the emotional toll this must have taken on Elvis. He loved his manager, trusted him implicitly. Parker had pulled him from poverty to unimaginable fame. Disagreeing with the Colonel must have felt like a betrayal. It explained the resigned tone in the secret recording. It wasn't outright defiance, but a quiet, deeply felt complaint. He wasn't yelling. He was whispering his sorrow to a tape recorder because he couldn't voice it directly without upsetting the delicate balance of his career and his relationship with the man who ran it. It's like he was caught between loyalty and artistic integrity. Lily mused aloud to Mr. Harrison one afternoon. He couldn't break free without potentially destroying everything he'd built and hurting the man he trusted. Mr. Harrison nodded solemnly. "That's often the dilemma for artists, Lily, especially those who achieve such monumental success so quickly. The machine becomes too big to stop, or even to redirect." Lily decided that her presentation and any subsequent public release of the recording needed to contextualize the Colonel's role. It wasn't about villainizing him, but about understanding the complex web of relationships and commercial pressures that shaped Elvis's career. Colonel was a product of his time, a shrewd businessman operating in a cutthroat industry. And Elvis was in many ways his greatest creation, and simultaneously his greatest victim. She imagined Elvis sitting in his dressing room, pouring out his heart to the silent tape recorder. He wasn't blaming the Colonel directly, but expressing a deep internal conflict. He understood the business, but his artist soul was suffocating. Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about the secret recording. It was about giving Elvis a chance for his full story to be heard, including the intricate details of the golden cage built around him brick by brick by the very man who promised him the world. The shadow of the Colonel was long, but in the light of truth, perhaps Elvis's true artistic desires could finally shine. As Lily continued her research, digging deeper into Elvis's early filmography, she found compelling evidence of his acting talent. Proof that the frustration on the tape wasn't just a whim, but a genuine yearning from a skilled performer. She watched King Creole again, this time with a critical academic eye. Released in 1958, it was a gritty drama directed by Michael Curtiz, who had also directed Casablanca. In the film, Elvis played Danny Fisher, a troubled young man navigating the criminal underworld of New Orleans while trying to pursue a singing career. His performance was raw, emotional, and believable. He conveyed vulnerability, defiance, and a deep sense of longing. He wasn't just singing. He was acting with his whole body, his eyes, his expressions. "He's truly excellent in this," Lily remarked to Mr. Harrison after watching a particularly intense scene. "You can see the dramatic range. He's not just a pop star, he's a serious actor here." Mr. Harrison agreed. Indeed, critics at the time praised his performance. Many believed he had a promising future as a dramatic actor. Curtis himself, a formidable director. Lily also verscherzt "Love Me Tender." His debut. While a smaller role, he showed promise as the youngest brother caught in a family drama. During the Civil War, his death scene, though brief, was surprisingly able. He wasn't just posing for the camera. He was inhabiting the character. She found articles and interviews from that period where Elvis himself expressed his excitement about acting, talked about learning from seasoned actors, studying acting techniques, and his desire to take on more complex roles. He mentioned wanting to work with different directors to try new things. This was the Elvis before the golden cage tightened around him. Then came the stark contrast. After his army service, the film roles shifted dramatically. The films became lighter, more formulaic, and almost exclusively musical comedies. Lily compiled the timeline, highlighting the dramatic drop in critical appraisal for his movies. Even as box office numbers remained high, it was clear. The public loved Elvis, no matter what he did, but the artistic community, and more importantly, Elvis himself, knew something was lost. However, even within the confines of the later films, Lily noticed moments where Elvis's genuine talent would briefly shine through, a flash of vulnerability in a goofy scene, a nuanced expression that went beyond the script's shallow demands, a genuine moment of connection in a throwaway plot point. These were glimmers, small acts of rebellion by an actor who couldn't fully suppress his natural abilities. For example, in Jailhouse Rock, 1957, a musical drama, while still a formulaic vehicle. There were moments where Elvis conveyed a genuine sense of anger and ambition as a young singer striving for success. In Flaming Star, 1960, a Western, he played a character of mixed heritage caught between two worlds, and his performance was notably more serious than most of his other post-Army films. He didn't sing many songs in that one, which was a clear departure. It showed he could do dramatic roles. It wasn't that he couldn't act after the Army, Lily realized, making a note. It was that he wasn't allowed to, or rather, the opportunities for him to truly act were systematically removed. She found evidence of his attempts to push back even in small ways. He would sometimes try to infuse a scene with more realism or suggest a different delivery for a line, only to be gently but firmly steered back to the established commercially safe path. These were the moments he was likely thinking of when he recorded his frustrations in 1964. Lily began to see a pattern. Elvis trying to break free, even momentarily, from the confines, and the system pulling him back. His passion for film wasn't entirely extinguished, but it was being slowly suffocated. The secret recording wasn't just a random outburst. It was the culmination of years of suppressed artistic longing. She also learned about his deep love for movies. Beyond just starring in them, he was a lifelong film buff, often renting out movie theaters late at night to watch films with his friends. He would study actors he admired, dissecting their performances. This wasn't the behavior of someone who simply enjoyed being a movie star. It was the behavior of someone who genuinely loved the art form. This research transformed Lily's perspective even further. The Elvis on the tape wasn't just complaining, he was grieving. He was mourning the loss of a path not taken, a potential unrealized. He knew what he was capable of, and he felt the weight of that unfulfilled potential. Armed with this deeper understanding, Lily felt even more convinced that the tape's release was essential. It wasn't about damaging Elvis's legacy, but enriching it. It was about showing the full complex picture of a man who was both a triumphant king and a tragic figure. An artist whose creative spirit fought valiantly against the gilded cage that contained him. The glimmers of hope and talent, though often overshadowed, proved he was more than just a caricature. He was an actor, longing to perform. The time had come to move beyond private research. Lily and Mr. Harrison agreed that the recording, along with Lily's comprehensive findings, needed to be shared responsibly. They decided on a multi-pronged approach. An academic paper to be presented at an upcoming film history conference. A small, carefully curated exhibit at the museum featuring some of the newly donated artifacts, including the shoebox and a replica of the tape recorder, and a limited controlled release of the audio itself. Lily was tasked with writing the abstract for the academic paper and developing the narrative for the exhibit. It was a daunting task, but she felt ready. She wanted to present Elvis's story, not as a scandal, but as a poignant human narrative of artistic struggle. "We need to make it clear that this isn't about disrespecting Elvis or Colonel Parker," Lily emphasized to Mr. Harrison. "It's about understanding the pressures and limitations that shaped an iconic career." Mr. Harrison nodded. "Exactly. It's about historical context and empathetic understanding. We're giving voice to a private struggle that has significant public implications for how we view celebrity, artistry, and commercialism." Lily spent hours crafting the language for the exhibit, ensuring it was respectful yet honest. The exhibit, titled "The Unheard Voice, Elvis Presley and the Golden Cage," would feature panels detailing his early acting promise, the rise of the movie machine, the Colonel's influence, and culminate with the story of the discovery of the tape. A listening station would allow visitors to hear excerpts with a clear disclaimer about the private nature of the recording. For the academic presentation, Lily worked tirelessly on her paper, weaving together direct quotes from the tape with her extensive research. She focused on the intersection of artistic ambition and commercial reality, using Elvis as a powerful case study. Before any public release, Mr. Harrison convened a small, trusted group of museum board members and academic colleagues to review their plans. Played the entire recording for them, and Lily presented her research findings. The room was silent, captivated by Elvis's raw voice. When the tape finished, a palpable sense of awe and sadness hung in the air. Professor Davies, a renowned film historian, spoke first. "Lily, Mr. Harrison, this is extraordinary. It offers an unparalleled glimpse into the private world of a global phenomenon. It humanizes him in a way no biography ever could. This isn't sensationalism, it's scholarship of the highest order." One of the board members, a longtime supporter of the museum, had tears in her eyes. "I grew up with Elvis. I loved his movies, but to hear him, truly hear his pain, it makes me see him differently, more profoundly. He was more than just the king. He was a man struggling to be an artist." Consensus was unanimous. The recording should be shared, but carefully, Lily felt a wave of relief and a surge of determination. She wasn't carrying this burden alone anymore. Others understood its importance, its power. As the date for the film history conference approached, Lily found herself growing more nervous. This would be her first major presentation. She practiced relentlessly, honing her words, ensuring her delivery was clear and able. She wanted Elvis's voice to resonate, to be heard with the empathy it deserved. On the day of the conference, Lily stood before a packed auditorium of scholars, historians, and film enthusiasts. She began by introducing the context of Elvis's movie career, setting the stage for his artistic ambitions and the commercial pressures he faced. Then, with a deep breath, she explained the discovery of the secret recording. She pressed play on the sound system. The familiar voice filled the large room, raw and vulnerable. "I'm tired. I'm just so damn tired of it all. These movies, they're killing me." A hush fell over the audience. Could feel the collective intake of breath, the shared understanding. For the next 10 minutes, Lily played carefully selected excerpts, interspersed with her expert analysis, connecting Elvis's personal frustrations to the broader issues of creative control in Hollywood. She showed clips from King Creole to highlight his early promise, then contrasted them with scenes from his later, more formulaic films. When the excerpts ended, a moment of profound silence hung in the air before a wave of applause. It wasn't just polite applause. It was genuine, heartfelt. People had been moved. They had heard something truly authentic, something that reshaped their understanding of an icon. During the Q&A session, the questions were thoughtful, empathetic. No one accused her of sensationalism. Instead, they expressed gratitude for the new perspective. One professor thanked her for humanizing a legend. It was as if, after all these years, Elvis's silent plea had finally found an audience that truly understood. The burden she had felt was shared, transformed into a powerful catalyst for empathy and reevaluation. She had helped Elvis tell his story, not just to a few people, but to a community of scholars and fans eager to listen. The ripple effect was growing into a wave, and it was beautiful. The academic conference was just the beginning. News of the Elvis secret recording spread rapidly through the academic and fan communities. It wasn't a tabloid sensation. It was treated with a respectful, almost reverent curiosity. Major news outlets picked up on the story, but largely focused on the historical and artistic significance, rather than scandalous headlines. The museum's exhibition, The Unheard Voice, Elvis Presley and the Golden Cage, opened to record crowds. People lined up eager to see the shoebox, the tape recorder, and to hear the man himself speak so candidly. The listening station, where visitors could put on headphones and hear excerpts of the recording, was constantly occupied. Lily, now a rising star in the film history world, gave interviews, carefully explaining the context and the message behind the recording. She emphasized that it was about recognizing Elvis's artistic depth and the challenges he faced. Not about diminishing his achievements. The reaction from fans was overwhelmingly positive. Many expressed a profound sense of validation. "I always felt like he was capable of more," one fan commented on an online forum. "This tape just confirms what we always suspected. He was trapped. It's heartbreaking, but it also makes me admire him even more for enduring it all." Another wrote, "He wanted to be an actor, not just a commodity." This tape lets us see the real Elvis, the artist. Thank you to Lily and the museum for sharing this. Critics, too, began to re-evaluate Elvis's movie career. Films previously dismissed as mere escapist fluff were now viewed through a more empathetic lens. Reviewers acknowledged the undeniable commercial success, but also discussed the stifled artistic potential. They talked about the moments of genuine acting that, as Lily had identified, would occasionally break through the formula. Film studies departments began incorporating the Elvis tape into their curricula as a prime example of the intersection of art, commerce, and celebrity culture. Discussions about artist autonomy versus studio control became more nuanced, with Elvis's story serving as a powerful case study. Lily herself received emails and letters from people around the world thanking her for bringing this to light. One letter, particularly touching, was from an elderly woman who had worked as a script supervisor on one of Elvis's later films. She wrote, "I saw the sadness in his eyes back then. We all did, those of us who cared about him, but we couldn't say anything to hear his own words. Now it's a relief. It's like he's finally being understood all these years later." The recording wasn't just a historical curiosity. It was a catalyst for deeper empathy and understanding. It broke down the monolithic image of the always happy, always in control superstar and revealed the vulnerable human being beneath. The heartwarming aspect truly blossomed here. It wasn't about solving Elvis's problems, that was impossible given his passing, but it was about granting him posthumously something he had desperately longed for: recognition of his artistic desires and the acknowledgement of his struggles. He had poured his heart out to a silent tape, And now, decades later, his voice was speaking to millions, finding the understanding it had craved, the reevaluation. People began to see his music from the later 60s and 70s in a new light. His return to live performances in 1968, the famous '68 comeback special, which was a clear departure from the movie formula, gained even more significance. It was seen as his triumphant escape from the golden cage, his reclaiming of his true artistic voice. The recording provided a deeper context for why that comeback was so vital for him. Lily felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had started as a student in a dusty archive, unsure of what to do with the found object. Now, she had helped unlock a hidden truth, providing a missing piece of the puzzle of one of the world's most famous lives. Power of understanding, sparked by a single secret recording, had rippled across the globe, touching hearts and changing minds. Elvis Presley, the man, the artist, was finally being heard, truly heard and understood. His frustration, once a private burden, had become a shared story, a testament to the enduring human need for creative expression and recognition. The impact of the secret recording and Lily's subsequent work continued to grow, subtly yet powerfully reshaping the public's perception of Elvis Presley. His legacy, once largely defined by his unparalleled musical success and a string of often mocked movies, began to be reevaluated with a newfound depth and empathy. Museums and cultural institutions around the world picked up on the story. Documentaries were produced using excerpts from the recording to frame Elvis's career as a compelling narrative of an artist's struggle within the commercial machine. Academics published further papers, exploring themes of celebrity, artistic integrity, and creative control in Hollywood's golden age. What had once been a source of private frustration for Elvis became a universal point of connection. People understood his dilemma, the desire for creative fulfillment versus the demands of a lucrative, but creatively stifling industry. It resonated with artists, entrepreneurs, and anyone who had ever felt trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The Golden Cage became a widely recognized metaphor for his movie career, replacing the earlier, more simplistic narratives of mere fame and fortune. Fans who had once jokingly dismissed his movies now revisited them with a new eye, searching for those glimmers of talent that Lily had identified. They saw not just a star, but a man doing his job, a professional while yearning for something more. His acting performances in Love Me Tender King, Creole, and Flaming Star, which had long been overshadowed by his musical output, gained renewed appreciation. Film critics encouraged a fresh look at these early works, acknowledging that Elvis indeed possessed a genuine dramatic talent that was largely squandered. The dialogue surrounding Colonel Parker also evolved. While his managerial style was still seen as restrictive, it was discussed less as a malicious act and more as a reflection of his relentless, almost tunnel-visioned business strategy. He was a product of a different era of entertainment, and his loyalty to Elvis's financial success, while stifling artistically, was undeniable. The recording helped people understand the complex relationship between Elvis and his manager, one built on trust and success, even if it came at a creative cost. Most importantly, the recording brought a deeper human element to Elvis's iconic status. He wasn't just the perfect, unreachable king. He was a man with vulnerabilities, strings, and frustrations. This vulnerability paradoxically made him even more beloved. It allowed people to connect with him on a more personal level, seeing him not just as a legend, but as a flawed, relatable human being. Lily, now a recognized voice in film and cultural studies, was at the forefront of this reevaluation. She was invited to speak at universities, to consult on documentaries, and to contribute to books about Elvis. She remained grounded, always emphasizing the importance of ethical historical research and empathetic storytelling. "This tape is a reminder," Lily often said in her lectures, "that behind every iconic image, there's a real person. And sometimes that person has a story they never got to tell in their lifetime. Our job as historians, as fans, is to listen." The museum's Unheard Voice exhibit became a permanent fixture drawing visitors from around the world. It wasn't the biggest or flashiest exhibit, but it resonated deeply because of its authenticity. People would stand for a long time at the listening station, eyes closed, absorbing the raw emotion of Elvis's words. Many left with a profound appreciation for the man behind the music in the movies. The heartwarming essence of this reevaluation was the sense of posthumous vindication for Elvis. He had felt unheard, frustrated, trapped. But now, decades later, his true feelings were out in the open, understood and respected. It was a testament to the idea that truth eventually finds a way to surface, and that an artist's sincere voice can transcend time. His journey from rock and roll, rebel to movie star, from frustrated actor to comeback king, was now viewed through a richer, more compassionate lens. The secret recording wasn't a footnote, it was a crucial chapter, revealing the hidden heart of a global icon, allowing his legacy to be reimagined, not just as a story of triumph, but also of profound human struggle and artistic yearning. He was finally truly heard. Lily Vance, once a nervous intern, was now a respected professor of film studies, known for her groundbreaking work on celebrity archives and artistic agency. The Elvis tape remained a cornerstone of her legacy, a powerful symbol of her commitment to uncovering the hidden truths behind the polished facades of fame. The museum in Nashville continued to thrive, its unheard voice exhibit drawing pilgrims from all over the world. The shoebox, the tape recorder, and the detailed conceptual displays served as a tangible connection to Elvis's inner world, a stark reminder that even the king of rock and roll had felt trapped and misunderstood. Every now and then, Lily would return to the museum, walking through the exhibit she had helped create. She'd watch people at the listening station, their faces rapt, some with tears in their eyes. She understood their connection. It wasn't about scandal or gossip. It was about empathy. It was about recognizing a shared human experience of wanting to be truly seen, truly heard, and to express oneself authentically. She often thought about Elvis alone in that dressing room in 1964, pouring his heart out to a silent machine. He couldn't have known that decades later his private whisper would become a public declaration resonating with millions. He couldn't have known that a young woman years after his passing would stumble upon his confession and dedicate herself to ensuring his frustration was finally understood, not as a complaint, but as a testament to his deep artistic soul. The heartwarming aspect of this story wasn't a magical resolution where Elvis suddenly got to make Oscar-winning movies. That wasn't possible. The heartwarming element lay in the journey of understanding. It was about the discovery of a raw, honest voice and the power of that voice to change perceptions, even posthumously. It was about giving solace in a way to a departed artist by finally acknowledging his unspoken pain and unfulfilled dreams. Lily had received many accolades for her work, but the most rewarding part was the shift in public discourse. Elvis Presley was still the king, still the musical revolutionary, but now he was also recognized as an artist who yearned for more, a human being who struggled against the commercial pressures that ultimately defined much of his career. His music, his performances, his entire body of work now carried a new layer of meaning. When fans listened to a joyful song from a movie soundtrack, they might also reflect on the hidden frustration that fueled its creation. When they watched his triumphant 1968 comeback special, they understood the desperate need behind that artistic reclamation. The entire narrative of his life was enriched, made more complex and profoundly human. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Lily sat in her office, Skyline. She had a copy of the digitized recording playing softly on her computer. Elvis's voice filled the room, familiar now, almost like an old friend. "I just gotta say something before I lose my mind completely." The words still held their raw power, but they no longer felt like a cry of despair. Instead, they felt like a quiet triumph. Testament to a man who, even when his public image was carefully controlled, managed to preserve a small, secret space for his true self. And in that space, he left a message, hoping against hope that someone someday would hear it. Lily smiled. They had heard it. The echoes of the king's private plea had reverberated through time, finally reaching the ears and hearts of those who truly listened. His frustration, once a solitary burden, had transformed integrity and human vulnerability, ensuring that Elvis Presley's legacy was not just about the fame and the fortune, but also about the profound, beautiful, and sometimes heartbreaking journey of an artist's soul. He was understood at last. And for Lily, that was the gravest reward of all.